McLaren's biggest upgrade for 2022. If there is one team that surely exceeded our expectations, that has to be McLaren. The Woking-based team has managed to finish P4 and P5 with both of its drivers, and the most pleasant surprise on the grid was by Ricciardo, who crawled up to P5 after starting P16. True, 6 drivers retired in the race, and that made the event much easier for him, but considering how demanding the track was for the rest of the grid, the good decisions and the calamity is what brought McLaren some solid points and overtaking Alpine in the Constructors' Championship. But what is it exactly that McLaren brought to its car that made them so competitive yet again? McLaren had a decent weekend if you look at the pace of Norris throughout the free practice sessions and on Saturday. The young Briton qualified P5 and was able to keep up a solid pace in order to not get overtaken by the rest of the grid, specifically Alpine. A huge helping hand was landed by both Alpine cars retiring due to reliability issues, as well as Hamilton hitting the wall and Verstappen locking down while completing an overtake on Norris. Nevertheless, Norris takes P4 and was followed by Ricciardo's amazing P5 finish, the highest one for him so far in the season, and a huge part of that goes to the biggest upgrade they brought this season in Singapore. The Woking-based team made changes to the layout of the side pod and engine cover bodywork, and there were some alterations made to the floor and diffuser earlier in this season that completed these upgrades. But what's even more impressive is that the team was able to finish P4 and P5 after mounting the upgrades to Norris's car only, while Ricciardo was left to battle through the grid with the old version of his car. However, the Aussie will have a taste of the new upgrades in Japan, Suzuka, as he hopes that they will be a huge booster to his performance. So, what is it that McLaren did, and why are they satisfied with it? According to the technical director James Key, the upgrades themselves aren't that visible on the car, but the impact they have on the overall performance is something that we've been able to witness on Sunday. There is more you can't see. Given the differences at the front, obviously they impact the sides of the floor, the underside of the floor. There is a lot of detail beginning to develop now, lots of surfaces and things that don't look logical when you just think about the real basics of ground effect, but actually make the differences. The bits you can't actually see are some of the most effective parts, said James. The Singapore GP has been really effective when it comes to determining the development path for the team in 2023. The MCL 36 saw multiple upgrades being mounted to the car, but the most important one is probably in the new inlet arrangement. The team has taken some inspiration from the RB18, which is the most successful car currently on the grid, and it wouldn't be the first time in 2022 that other manufacturers are taking inspiration from the Austrian team. However, the design itself is a continuation of the design changes that were already implemented on the MCL 36 during the 2022 season. Many of the other constructors have converged on Red Bull's overall side pod solution, with multiple teams adopting the downwash-style ramp solution. On the other hand, McLaren is the only team to try an open-top inlet arrangement that is similar to the one used on the RB18, which is truly a bold move. Of course, it is not an exact replica of that part, and the last thing that McLaren would want in the 2022 season that was challenging enough by itself is to be sued by Red Bull and risk losing the fight for P4 in the Constructors' Championship outside of the track. However, conceptually, the two cars are very similar in this design, and what's even more important is that, apart from this upgrade, the team has seen a significant difference in terms of layout under the hood. Here you can see a difference not only in the internal packaging of the radiators, coolers and electronics housed within, but also in the positioning of the SIS or side impact spars. If you compare the MCL 36 of Norris, the car that got the upgrades for the Singapore GP, and the RB18, you'll notice that the SIS is positioned lower compared to the Austrian team's car. Not only that, the team opted for a more rearward position for the upper SIS, mounting it behind the cooling paraphernalia. The Woking-based team is likely to look at repackaging the entire side pod arrangements for next season, but in the interim, it hopes the changes made to the inlet and the section forward of the Coke bottle line will provide an uplift in cooling and aerodynamic efficiency, with the cooling louvers also adapted to suit. There is one more aspect of the sidepod design that has been adapted for Singapore and for the remainder of the calendar, and that is the forward undercut. This part is now with a deeper gully beneath the inlet that takes into account the revised flow it'll receive, given the alterations made to the floor, bib, and floor fences ahead of it. Is McLaren the only team that opted for a different solution for the floor where it connects to the side of the chassis at the start of the season? No, Alfa Romeo was the other team that did this at the start of the season. However, Alfa Romeo decided to ditch this design because it saw that it was not fitting with what they wanted to receive from the car, and that resulted in the Woking-based team ditching it too. The outgoing solution saw a channel created along the car's center line that funneled airflow from under the car's center line onto the top surface of the floor and around the side pods. The arrangement did result in the underfloor being robbed of some of the airflows that it might otherwise receive, though, with the underfloor channels narrower on the MCL36 than some of its opposition. As part of its overhaul, this entire design language has been eroded, with the leading edge of the floor now set up to meet with the side of the chassis, while all of the fences have been optimized to take advantage of the new flow regime. But what are the hidden changes that Key talked about, and how did they boost the performance of the MCL36? It's clear that McLaren is being proactive in its design processes, with the team using the stepped boat tail solution also seen in the lead team's designs. The changes that McLaren did on the underfloor are still not visible to us, but it's likely that the changes they did to the floor's exterior have also resulted in changes made to the underfloor too. Now it's up to us to wait and see what the Woking-based team has chosen to do with the MCL36. McLaren also noted in its submission for the pre-event automobile display that it has a new diffuser at its disposal too, but this was considered a test item to better understand local flow behavior at different ride heights and might never be used during the competitive portion of the race weekend. The temperatures in Singapore was something that presented a huge challenge for the teams, which is why McLaren made a change to the size and therefore shape of the inlet. The enlarged variant is what we'd consider more of a conventional shape, albeit clearly shaped with the intent of keeping the juncture where the upper wishbone and pull rod meet exposed. What was happening in the team that is currently McLaren's fiercest rival, Alpine? Although they didn't have an update package for the Singapore GP, both drivers had a new floor at their disposal. However, their car proved to have one of the most fragile engines on the grid yet again, so neither Alonso nor Ocon were able to finish the race due to engine failure. The alterations that Alpine made to the underfloor include a new ridge design, which works in a conjunction with the ice skates, a part that Red Bull firstly introduced in the early phases of the season, and then Alpine managed to mount it successfully on their car. Externally, some changes were made on the floor's edge, and they were very clear to be seen. The previously upward-tipped rear section of the midsection is now flattened out, and that section of the floor now features a full-length metal strip on its edge. On top of this, the arched floor section after it now also has a strip of metal to protect it as well. All of these upgrades, and yet your engine doesn't work. How bizarre, huh? Nevertheless, it's likely that the battle between Alpine and McLaren for the P4 spot in the Constructors' Championship will go on until the very end of this season, and that is something we are more than happy to see. What do you think about McLaren's newest upgrades? Let us know in the comments below.